All right, good afternoon. Welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday, brought to you by Montana PBS and Idaho Public Television. We're really excited to have you here with us today on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We appreciate your time. The slides we're going to be talking about today can be found at this bit.ly link, bit.ly/Hyperdocs 1119. I think that was the date of the day that I made that bit.ly. I'm not quite sure why I chose 1119. But if you put that into your browser, that'll bring up the slides that we're using. We've got links embedded into each of the slides. And I will also put the link to the chat box in the chat box as well in just a little bit. But the way Tech Talk Tuesday works is we have a different topic every month, and we bring in some teacher experts to share experiences from their classroom and to show examples. But it's very informal. So if you're here with us, please feel free to ask questions. You can put them in the chat box, or you can just, wave us down. We want this to be a discussion. That's why we call it Tech Talk. So feel free to pop questions in the chat box or just interrupt us. I'll introduce everybody here today. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll let our two teacher guests introduce themselves. My name is Nikki Vredenberg, and I'm the Director of Education at Montana PBS. I stepped into this role almost 4 years ago now. I was a classroom teacher for 16 years in an elementary school, and I got this opportunity of a lifetime wrapped up in a bow to come work for Montana PBS to do professional development for teachers interested in technology integration and media literacy. And it was in that role that I got to meet Carrie Wardle, who does what I do in Idaho. She's not with us this afternoon. She decided to take some vacation time this week, but usually Carrie is here, and she's my partner in crime. And we both do similar work, just in different states. Both our states are similar in that we are small stations, and it just made more sense for us to team up and do these webinars rather than each of us do them separately. So though normally Carrie would be here. And then I also in my work, I got to meet the amazing Sarah Dahl, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so my name is Sarah Dahl, like Nikki stated, and I am a tech integration specialist with the Livingston School District. I do tech integration with teachers K through 12. This is actually a new position that was created just this year, and they hired me to do it. I was originally a high school English teacher, and I've been an English teacher for the last 14 years, and then moved into tech integration. And a lot of this is based on my working with Nikki and my training with Nikki in Montana PBS, that I've been able to be a good fit in this position. One thing I do want to totally put a shout out to all of the teachers teaching in COVID. Last spring, that was me, and this year everybody is working so hard in such a difficult situation, and I'm super grateful for the work that teachers are doing, and I'm glad to be able to work with them and try to ease them through this as much as I can as a tech integration specialist. And so that's how I'll be lending kind of my lens is really based on what I've found in working with teachers through a very, very big change.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sarah. And before I was in this role, I met Amanda Rapstad. We have similar teaching origins. We both taught in Lake Havasu, Arizona, and not at the same time, but then met at an ed camp and then have connected on Twitter ever since. And then Amanda was my awesome 4th grade teacher for my daughter last year. So we were super lucky. Amanda, would you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit?
Yeah, we also share a common friend, which is so bizarre, which is like how I knew of Nikki before I even knew Nikki, and then met her by chance and like didn't realize it was the same person until I was talking to our friend Erin, and she's like, that is my friend Nikki. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So it's been kind of funny, but I am Amanda Rapstad, and I teach 4th grade at Hequat in Belgrade. This is my 3rd or 4th year in 4th grade. I don't even remember. I feel like last year was like 7 years. And so now I'm like totally gone on how many years I've been there. But I've taught 1st grade and I've taught 3rd grade as well. And I've had a passion for integrating technology in my classroom for a long time. So, you know, I've done Hyperdocs with fourth graders, but I've also done it with my first graders. So, you know, I don't know, I do know, Caitlin, what grade you teach, but anyone else who's watching, I think sometimes it's helpful to see that this can be done in the younger grades as well. So I guess that's kind of why I'm here, just to kind of lend that perspective.
Great. And then maybe those of you who are in our audience, if you wouldn't mind just telling us your name and what you teach. I see we have Ruth here, and maybe tell us where you are too.
I'm Ruth Whipple. I work in special education in Twin Falls, Idaho.
Welcome. Do you know Carrie then?
Mm,
No? Okay. I
No.
wondered if she's our Idaho Public Television rep. So normally you probably heard about this through Idaho Public Television, I'm guessing.
mhm.
Right. All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And Caitlin, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi there, I'm Caitlin, and I also work at It's my first year as a teacher and my first year in third grade.
Welcome. It's good to have you. Thanks for coming. I am going to, I think I get to do the first few things. So our agenda today is we're going to talk about what a Hyperdoc is and why you would use one and where you could find them to get started. And then we've got our two expert teachers here to share some examples and just give you some stories from the classroom about how Hyperdocs have worked in different settings that they've worked in. So the first thing is, what is a Hyperdoc? And it is a digital lesson plan, basically. It's meant to be self-paced. It's an interactive document, which could be a Google Doc or it could be Microsoft Word. It could be Google Slides. It could be PowerPoint. Whatever platform you're using or that your students are comfortable using. Very layman's terms, it's a document with some links, and the students click on the links and it takes them to things. But it's a bit more complex than that because it also requires that students do things. So they might click on a link to watch a video and then come back to the document and list 3 things they learned from the video, and then go down and click on another link and read an article and write a letter to the author of the article with 3 questions they had about that topic. So it's meant to be a self-paced activity that allows the students to explore content on their own. So when we think about teaching in a digital world, a lot of times as teachers, and I know when I first started teaching, I thought I was the one that was supposed to deliver all of the content to my students, and that they couldn't take in anything if it didn't come out of my mouth. And we're learning that that's actually only one way a student can learn content. There's actually a lot of research to support that a student digging into the content on their own and exploring it on their own, either before a teacher introduces the topic or as part of the teacher's overall lesson plan or unit plan, allows them to understand and work with that content and engage with it in a deeper level than they would have if we just stood in the front of the room and talked to them. A great place to get started, if you're just learning about Hyperdocs or you want to take your skills a bit further, is picking up this book, the Hyperdoc Handbook, which is written by Lisa Highfield, Kelly Hilton, and Sarah Landis. I highly recommend just Googling their names as well, because they've talked on a lot of podcasts and a lot of webinars. I've been able to see, I got to see Kelly Hilton speak at a conference a few years ago. They have some really interesting stories about what led them to writing this book and to creating Hyperdocs. And it's worth listening to their story firsthand. But this is a really great step-by-step guide for how to get started, where to get started, how to manage it, how to assess using them. And you can buy it on Amazon, and in the slides I made the book a hyperlink and it'll take you to how to purchase it on Amazon. Go to my next one. So true Hyperdoc is, I used to say a Hyperdoc is like a Webquest. Remember Webquest back in the early 2000s? And it was like a scavenger hunt that kids went on. And it's a little bit like that. But where a Webquest was mostly clicking and reading and just following a path of links, A Hyperdoc is different because it's click, read, watch, view, and then engage. And it follows a little bit more pedagogy as far as having the kids interact with the content. It might have them create something at the end. It might have them collaborate with their peers at the end. But the biggest piece is that it is self-paced. So when you design it so that you can give it to a student digitally, whether it's in Google Classroom or or just sharing it in the Google Drive, and they open it up and they just start working their way through the content piece by piece. And when they're all finished at the end, there's usually some cumulative activity that they can do, something they can create to show their knowledge and to show what they've learned. Sarah, Amanda, do you have anything to add in my description of Hyperdocs? Make sure I didn't miss anything.
One thing, and Nikki totally touched on this, but I would love to reinforce, is Hyperdocs are student-centered. Like, they are about how the student is working through that, what the student is engaging in, what the student is exploring, and they're doing it at their pace. And that's kind of the beauty of them, is that it's about how the student is engaging in the learning. Just like she had said, you know, even myself in the early stages of my teaching, I felt that same way. Like, in order to get them to learn and to move through the content, it had to come out of my mouth, it had to. But I've found that in using Hyperdocs and then expanding, you know, how I use them, that students engage in it even at an even deeper level than what I thought I was pushing them to do, because I was speaking the words to try to get them to do it. And so that's what I think is really beautiful about Hyperdocs, is how student-centered they are.
And I think, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, Nikki, but I think the beauty of this is that, you know, you create this and it has all of your content and what the students need to, you know, learn and discover, and they're working. And as they're doing that, it frees you up to be able to work with students. So one of my examples that I'm going to share with you is one that I built for narrative writing for 4th grade. And honestly, it's like I have so much more time to work with students than if I were like, okay, I'm presenting this lesson and now everybody's doing this, and then I'm presenting this lesson. You know, if I'm like, okay, you know, here's the content, you start working through it, then that whole time during writing, I'm free to go around and like work with students or pull a group if I need to. So I think that that's where, you know, kind of the buy-in for teachers is that it really frees up your time. Like, once you have it created, you know, that's obviously some time on the front, or if you borrow one or whatever, but it frees up your time in the classroom to actually spend time working with the students. So I think that that's, for me, one of the things that really makes this such a powerful tool.
Yeah, that's a great point. That if you do work with small groups or anything like that, it is an independent task in the classroom. So there are a few main places you can go to get started using these that are all free, which is exciting. The first one is this website called hyperdocs.co, and this was created by the authors of this book. And so you can go to this site and you can go to start, and within start, it'll give you a nice, here's what a Hyperdoc is and here's how to get started. But then I go to find and templates. And so this has a few basic Hyperdoc lessons. So I think this is a great place to start, is getting on this basic template, which it's all built for you. And then all you have to do is type in your content and link it up. So this is a single Google Doc. It uses the engage, explore, explain, apply, share, reflect model. Now, I will say the first couple Hyperdocs I did with students, I had fewer steps than this. I did engage, explore, explain, and that was it. And just like when you're first teaching kids to do things, you want to do it in those little bite-sized chunks. You don't want it to feel overwhelming. You know, a kid will open up an assignment, and if they see more than 3 steps, they can shut down. So sometimes it's good to just maybe delete some of these last ones and just get started with the first few steps. And the way this document works is all the symbols are there, and then all you would need to do, it says insert a video. So you type in your brief instructions, insert the link to the video. you would make a copy of this document and just edit it for your purposes. And so that's a great example of a basic Hyperdoc. They've also got one, and I know Sarah likes these, the 5E framework, that takes it a little bit further and takes the engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. So thinking that we're going to take kids through this level, these levels of thinking, so that, and this is a nice framework when you're building these activities too. It can be real easy to just copy and paste links and realize that you're not having them do anything more but engage with the content. And so having to rethink it with, okay, what would elaborate look like with this? How would they elaborate on their learning or on this topic when we get to this step? So that's another template that you would just go to File, make a copy, and then you've got your own copy for you to edit and then share with your students. In addition to the templates, they've also got some that are pre-made in different topic areas. So when you go to Find and you come down to Hyperdocs, then they've got them categorized. And this is teachers all over the world who have donated their time to and their talents to create these different Hyperdocs. And so you can come in here and go to templates or samples, and they have them listed by topic. So if you're looking for elementary, if you're looking for Halloween, if you're looking for specifically 5th grade or things about read aloud, they're all grouped under here. So Halloween is past, but we can go ahead, and I know that these were popular a couple of weeks ago, that this is a list of all the Halloween Hyperdocs that other people have made. And I'm sure you could probably find the same for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of that. So those are a great place to get started. And sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just use one that somebody else made and check it closely to make sure all the links work and to make sure it does what you want it to do, or it's not too long or overwhelming. I made a mistake, kind of a rookie mistake the first time I used one with my 4th and 5th graders. Was I got it, I didn't really look at it that closely and assigned it in Google Classroom and realized it was really, really long, like ridiculously long, that they got, you know, several steps into it and got really overwhelmed because there was just so much to it that I could have easily cut out a few of the activities. So that's a mistake I would recommend not making. The other thing you can do is this link on this slide. Whoop, I went too far. This link on this slide is the link to a Padlet that was published by Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook. That was just a crowd share of, he put a social media post out there and said, share your favorite Hyperdocs. And people, again, from all over the world had just added Hyperdocs and things to this Padlet that you can use and find things. This is a little bit less searchable and easy to find things. But as it pops up here, you can kind of see all of the different types of Hyperdocs that people have shared. And then I also recommend on social media. So if you are on Facebook, you can ask to be added to a closed Facebook group for Hyperdocs. And in that group, people are also sharing the templates that they've made. And I also see people post things like, I'm looking for a template to go with the book, The One and Only Ivan. Has anybody created something? And 6 people will share a link. It's amazing how open and sharing people are in that group. You can do the same thing on Twitter, that if you just search hashtag Hyperdocs on Twitter, and a lot of people will share things that they've made on Twitter. And again, you can just post a tweet looking for Hyperdocs about the American Revolution, and people will get on there and share. I think the spirit of Hyperdocs is that I'll make it and create it for my group, and then you take it and modify it for your group. And that's really a cool thing about the community that it's grown around this movement. So I'm gonna stop sharing and let, I think Amanda, you're next. So I'm gonna let you take control of the slides and let you tell some stories about how you've used Hyperdocs with your students.
Okay, perfect. I think I have everything pulled up here. So I have on my slide, I just have the couple examples that I'm going to talk about, but I already have them pulled up here. So I actually, what I was trying to pick examples, I tried to do a couple different things. I tried to show you a couple different subjects. I tried to show you a couple different grade levels since I've taught multiple grade levels. And then I also have an example of one that I just completely borrowed and didn't change. One that I adapted, and then one that I just created myself. So you can kind of see those as well, because it's really, there's a lot of entry points in here for you if you know, aren't quite comfortable jumping in and making one yet. So this hopes and dreams one was what I start off the year with. So this was created by one of my friends, Rachel Marker, and then someone else I think she might work with. But she teaches, I think she's 6th grade, and or she created this for 6th grade. I can't remember. So you know, this you can use with varying ages, and I think you could even make some more adaptations to it to make it suitable for younger learners as well. And so I think that this is a really good one. Number one, it helps you get to know the kids. So it's talking about their goals and what they want to accomplish. You know, what their kind of thoughts for the new year are. So I feel like it's how you get to know them, but it's also how you introduce Hyperdocs in kind of a non-threatening way. So they have, you know, to watch this video. So this is pretty much exactly like they built it. I think the only thing I did, we're not allowed to send YouTube videos. So I think I had to put the videos into, download them and relink them. But that's something that you should be checking the videos anyways, because sometimes if you use one, you'll give it to the kids and they'll be like, this video doesn't work. And then all of a sudden you have to go back in and change it on everyone or reassign it. So I'm teaching online this year, and I've definitely learned that the hard way with like you said, with using it and then finding out it's too hard. Like I've used things where I'm like, oh, this looks great, but I didn't check the video link and then it doesn't work. So I would definitely recommend doing that. But then they just go in and they watch it, and then they go on here and they type. And so in person, this is something I would teach the kids how to do. So I would be walking around and helping while they're doing that. I would probably have it pulled up on the screen and show them that they're going to go on here and they're going to actually type their answer. One of the things that I've discovered since teaching online and since last spring that I going forward, I think I will be building any new Hyperdocs in Google Slides. And I think I would actually put each step on its own page, and then you could link everything to the front page. And you could say, okay, Monday you're doing Discover and you're doing Explore. But the reason for that is one of the things that I've found with kids with using Google Docs, especially when you're not in person with them, training them and using, you know, teaching them how to do it. It's hard to get text boxes, or sometimes they won't realize that they have to click and type, especially for the younger kids. So in Google Slides, you can actually, I started using shapes instead of using text box. I put a shape. And so I'll say like type in the blue box. And so it's very apparent that like if there's a blue box, they have to type in it, which is, I guess it's kind of a simple thing, but it's made my life so much easier since I started doing that, because I'm not having to go back and be like, oh, I see you didn't answer this question, because it's a lot more apparent that there's something for them to answer. So, you know, they would just kind of work their way through this. And like Nikki said, there's quite a bit here. So I would not do this all in one day. I would put it, you know, start it, work on it for a little bit, come back to it the next day. I did this online with my students this year, and I think I gave them a week to do it. So they just had to do a section each day. And you really learn a lot. This year it was crazy. Like I'm reading their hopes and their dreams, and it's COVID. It's, I hope COVID goes away. I hope I can go back to school. I hope COVID. And I'm like, whoa, like it was kind of heavy reading them all. So you really kind of like get this picture of what's on their mind. So this is a great one, I think, to start off with, it just to get to know the kids and to introduce it. And then the second example that I have is specific to 4th grade, and it's for narrative writing. And this is one that I took and I borrowed it and then I adapted it. So, you know, there were some videos in there that I use with my class, so I linked those in. And it still has that, like they're watching the videos and they're answering the questions, and then they're exploring some books. And so they get a choice here of different books that they can explore. And then I happened to do ones that I knew that I might be using. I love Saturdays and Tea Cakes. Like I use it for so much. And I was like, I really want that in there. there's a video of Lester Laminack reading it, and he does an awesome job. So I went in and I pulled books or used books that I knew that I would either want to use or to give them different formats. So there's a couple that are like just reading. There's a couple that are like a video. I think there's one that's an audiobook. So then you can tell the students too, like, hey, if you like listening to an audiobook, choose this one. If you like, watching a video, choose this one. If you just want to read a passage on a piece of paper, choose this one. So I think the opportunity to build in some student choice in these is really powerful. And then, so this is a longer one. So obviously, like, this is not one where you would do it in a day or maybe even a week. Like, I probably would not do this in a week. It would be something that they would be working on while they were working on their narrative stories. And they would just kind of walk through it. And then the students would be at different stages. So for this one, I haven't used this one online. This was in class. And so they have a writing partner. And so if you were to use this online, you could use something like a Padlet where they were sharing. But I do like to still have that collaborative face-to-face built into. So that is how I have that built into here. So, but you could use a Padlet if you're just teaching online. So they would just kind of walk through this. And then as they're doing it, then I'm helping students. I'm, pulling groups. If I notice that there's several students who are just stuck, like getting started, I would pull them in a group and help them get started. Or I would say like, hey, I see that you're on to step 2. Do you have some ideas for them? So it really just frees up my time to walk around and meet with students as I need to. And then the fun part is that, I think I have it on this one. So for extend, there's lots of different things that they can do. And I liked this. This wasn't my idea. It was on here, minor leagues or major leagues. They have some different kind of presentation ideas that they could even go further and say like, okay, I'm going to take my narrative story and I'm going to turn it into a movie, or I'm going to turn it into a cartoon. So I think that that's kind of fun, especially for a bigger project like this. So again, I borrowed a lot of that. I adapted it to make it fit my needs, but it was done. The content was there. The writing was there. It was super easy for me to be like, okay, I want these stories. I use this video with my students. So it seems like a lot here, but like most of this was already done for me. So I think this is a good example of just taking something and then making it fit for your students. And then the very last one that I'm going to show you is one. This is actually my very first Hyperdoc. I just decided to like go for it and just make one. I'd never used one before. I was like, oh, this is cool. Let me make one. Very bare bones. But I also used it with first graders. So, and I don't have all the steps on here either. And so this was, I wanted to do an art project. I wanted them to get to know some famous artists. So I have it so that they're actually talking in class, but you could link a Padlet here. And then they watched 2 different videos to learn about 2 different artists. And then I had a little lesson, a mini lesson where I talked about the 2 different types of art projects and they could pick. So it's kind of like a hybrid thing where it's part of it they're doing independently and watching the videos and learning, but then part of it they're listening to me teach a little mini lesson. And then they could pick if they wanted to do a Klimt project or a Seurat project. And then they worked in small groups. So I actually did this. They did Makerspace. And so they were doing Makerspace and I was pulling a group and working with them on their art project. And then they switched the next week that we did art. But I think the reflection there too for art wasn't something before this point I had really thought about doing. I was kind of like, oh, here's a project, here's your art, it's done. So I even liked having that on the Hyperdoc where they could think about like how they felt as an artist and what they learned. And then they got to take a picture and share it in Seesaw and tell why they chose it. So that, like I said, it was with first graders and it went great. So this is definitely something that can be done with younger learners as well. So I think that, the more where you're like, okay, here's part of it is digital, but part of it you're teaching and part of it you're working with them really works well with the younger kids to kind of get them used to this. And give them some independence and some responsibility without just free for all being like, here's your Hyperdoc, go for it. Whereas with fourth graders, they are to the point, once I kind of walk them through the process once or twice, I can give them the writing one and be like, okay, here, you work on this. I'm going to be working with you guys in groups. So, you know, depending on, I don't know what ages, Ruth, you said you worked with, but I know you're special ed. So those are some, you know, things that you can adapt for your learners that you work with. I think that is all that I have. I'm not sure if we're doing questions before we move on, or if
if anybody has questions
moving
for
on.
Amanda about any of those, feel free to share.
Amanda, could you just explain a little bit, like in your Hyperdocs, you have places where the kids write in it.
Mhm.
How is it that you execute that so that they're writing on their own individual, like, could you explain maybe that process of working through with the students, how they have their own individual
Yeah.
fill-in?
So we use Google Classroom. So everything's in Google Classroom. And I kind of, I mean, I say I'm hybrid in the classroom. I don't know now after everything if that's a good word to use anymore, but I do a lot online and a lot, you know, it's kind of a mixture in my classroom. So I have a class set of Chromebooks that I got through Donors Choose. And so whether I was online or whether I was in the classroom, I would assign it in Google Classroom, and then I choose give every student a copy, and so that they have their own copy to work on. So that's how I've done it. It's, I think, the easiest to manage because they're all in one place. But I mean, you could share it if you didn't have Google Classroom. I guess, like, you know, whatever learning management system you have, you could share through there would probably be the best thing. They could make a copy and share it with you, but then that's one more thing that you have to teach them how to do. So it gets to be a lot.
In a lot of ways, sometimes that is the only choice, is to teach them how to make a copy and view it. But that's just a thinking in our situation in Livingston, where we have one school that uses, or two schools that use Google Classroom, and our other schools either use Seesaw or, you know, use Canvas, and that's not always an option. I wonder that for others, but teaching them to make a copy at a higher level is a possibility.
Yeah. And you could do it with fourth grade too. It's just, for me, I'm like, I don't want 27 emails with their work. I just want, you know, their one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, I mean, within Seesaw, the Seesaw activities library is full of basically Hyperdocs that are more activities, that they're on that slide film strip, and they, you know, go to the next page. It looks like Google Slides, and it has them doing things on each page. And so that, I know when I had fourth and fifth grade, I did share it with them and then teach the file, make a copy. And the way I forced it was I shared it in view only. So they really could do nothing with it in view only. And then when they start requesting access, that's when I'm like, file, make a copy.
Well, if you erase it too, if you erase the edit and put copy, it'll bring up that
That's
screen.
the other one, is it forces
that says make a copy, but then they have to know to share it with you.
Yeah.
I guess one workaround, it does take time for you. But one workaround that you could do is I've used like linked documents before, where I had like a Google slide and I have all the kids' names on it. And you could create all their copies and you could link them yourself, which again would take time for you, but for you, you wouldn't be getting a bunch of emails and they would be on one document. So I don't know if that makes sense, where you would, you know, you'd make the copy yourself and do it. It would take a lot of time, but they'd be in one place rather than having the kids just send you and then you're searching for them. But obviously that's not ideal. It would, you know, be best to use a learning management system if you have it.
Good question. All right, Sarah, you're up.
Okay. Let me just share really quick. That was I'm appreciative of where, I'm super appreciative of where Amanda left off, because, you know, she was talking about how you have the, hold on just a second. There we go. How you have the hybrid, you know, she's talking about the hybrid model and how students, you have students that are working independently, and then moments in which students, you know, you're maybe doing some direct instruction. And at a secondary level, you know, while there are definitely places in which you're wanting to do direct instruction, you are able to set students to a Hyperdoc and have them work kind of entirely within that Hyperdoc and whatever you link to it. And so what I'm going to kind of show you is a couple of examples of Hyperdocs. The one to the right that you're looking at that looks like the Hyperdocs that we've seen so far is one that a colleague of mine started doing last year. And in Livingston at Park High, we're a Microsoft school and not a Google school. And so she'd seen Hyperdocs and was excited about them, but we work out of Microsoft and Word. And so she had kind of tasked herself with like, how would this work in a Word document? And so she set this, this document up here as a Word document. And, oh, I think I linked it. Was hoping that I had linked it to the document, but it looks like I linked it to Hyperdocs. But basically, if you can kind of see that, what she has in place in this Hyperdoc, and this is for her chemistry class. She was a science teacher last year at Park High. This year, she is an assistant, a dean of students at our middle school, but she had created her Hyperdocs with the images, the pictures themselves being the links. So it's a little hard to see here, but the arrow that you are seeing right here is a video 1. And then she has 3 videos in this introduction and engage portion that she would have students watch, and then they're going to read in the textbook and then answer some questions. So her engage piece in this situation is linked to videos and is it having them get into their textbook, and then the activity that they would do or the homework that they would do would then be the questions. And at each place, what she has is either a link to maybe a poll that she has them do, or a link to an article. Maybe it's a link to an activity, but it's that same kind of idea that Amanda was presenting, where you have these different moments of, students engaging or exploring, or maybe they're doing some practice and then they're applying what they have done and they share out. And so this is kind of just at the high school level. This right here is an example of what it looks like in kind of a traditional sense. Now, I saw this, she'd worked on Hyperdocs, or worked through Hyperdocs for the entire year, and it kind of had been sharing a lot of what she was doing with them with me. But when we went into shutdown last spring, I was like, I would really like to try this, but I want to try it in a different way. I'm not sure that I necessarily want it in that doc setting. And so I actually had pursued it in Adobe Spark. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, once you get the hang of Hyperdocs and you really like the format, you like that idea of the engage and the explore and maybe the explain, and you're working through those learning processes. If you want to take it a step further, you can actually go maybe beyond the setup of the doc and visualize it in a different way. And so this link here is a Adobe Spark that I created in Page, or excuse me, in the website format, which is, it's not Page. No, it is Page. But what you can do is you can create kind of a flow. And so I took it and I wanted students to work through all of the processes, but I wanted them to be in what looked kind of like a website. And so I built this Spark here. And so you would start with engage, and your engage in this sense is the picture itself, which this is a kind of an urban legend from Hemingway, that Hemingway was tasked with trying to write a short story in as few words as possible. And he writes this, which is very tragic writing. And again, this isn't necessarily proven, but students would look at this and they're thinking about here the caption is, consider what is the story here. And so what the students would do to engage in this is they view this, and then we worked out of Teams last year. So they had a Teams post that they started to kind of talk out maybe what is the story, and that gets them into what 6-word memoirs are. And then we went into the Explore, and in the Explore, students are actually clicking into this website, which is a 6-word memoir website. They read through some of the examples. They're looking at basically how the website sets up what a 6-word memoir is. And then they posted in their teams their own definition based on what they found, and the title and the author of an example that they found while they were looking through that. And then as they kind of slide, like they scroll through this, then you hit the explain portion, you know, and in this part, it kind of explains the first part of the engage, and it explains what their, you know, what Hemingway kind of started with was this idea of these 6-word memoirs. And then when they click into the video, they're able to see some of this video. And so this portion is a way for them to understand, you know, that process. And then in this section, I added kind of apply and share together, because what I wanted to have the students do is I wanted them to create their own 6-word memoir based on one of the short stories that they'd read from Hemingway. And they would write a memoir as if they are one of the characters. So they're applying the concepts of the 6-word memoir, but they're also, what they're doing with this is sharing out for their peers, and then their peers are guessing who they think that it might be. And then I did this kind of twice because I wanted them not only to just apply it to what we were doing with Hemingway, but also to apply it to themselves. So they chose a moment in their own life or something that they were feeling at the time, and they created a post of a 6-word memoir, and then they posted that in Teams to share with their peers. And this was a way to engage them in Adobe Spark as well. So they used Adobe Spark to create the post for the 6-word memoirs, and then put them out there. And I'm going to kind of echo a little bit of what Amanda was saying in terms of applying this. Like when I did this, they were in shutdown, so they were doing this on their own, and a lot of what came out of that was those feelings of how it felt to be in quarantine, or how it felt to be shut off from school or from their friends, or, you know, things like that. So there definitely was a different feel for the time. And it was a really nice outlet for that feeling for them, simply because it was such an unprecedented time, and they were able to kind of, you know, synthesize those feelings, and they're doing it in such a short phrase, with it only being 6 words. And so, and then at the bottom of this, I was able to link just a Spark tutorial, and then the website to Adobe Spark. So this, while it's not necessarily a traditional Hyperdoc, what I'm appreciative of the setup of Hyperdocs, I was able to move into just a different feel for how, you know, a student might work through that Hyperdoc. Like Nikki had said, it can be done in Google Docs. It can be done in Google Slides. Amanda even said she'd like to, you know, move it into Google Slides. This is an opportunity if you're using an LMS and you have a way for students to digitally turn things in. You know, maybe you're using Google Classroom, maybe you're using Canvas, or you know, anything that students is their online platform. This becomes kind of the supplementary piece to guide them through that. So I'm going to jump back in here. Like Nikki had said, I really like the 5 E's. You know, Caitlin Tucker is a technology guru and really builds around best practices with technology. And I like her 5 E's. You know, that's the engage, explore, explain, elaborate and evaluate. And so kids are working towards those types of practices, and so I actually had even pushed farther, even past the Adobe Spark, and went back to Google Slides, because I'd used Google Slides before, but I looked at using Google Slides in a different way. And so what I have here is something that actually I built for PBS using the Unladylike 2020 web series. And in this gallery walk, I used those 5 E's, and I used the idea from Hyperdocs of engaging, but also the linking to things, going to the link, doing whatever the link is, and then having an activity that's attached. And I put it into what is what we're calling a gallery walk, and that's a very student-centered activity where as we enter into it, and I'll pull this up. This is linked to the slide, but this is where all of the materials for these lessons are. And if you look down here, here are the lesson plans based on that engage, explore, explain, and evaluate that go with this gallery walk. And the gallery walk is under the explore portion here. So while the gallery walk is not in itself the Hyperdoc, it is based on that Hyperdoc concept. And then the 5 E's are actually the lessons. Again, like Amanda had said, when you tackle Hyperdocs, depending on the length of which you're looking at, really determines the amount of time that you spend with this. But you are able to, you're able to jump into this. Maybe you only are looking at this in isolation. But this is a set of lessons that could take you probably up to 10, I would say up to 10 or 12 days if you wanted to put it into play. This is kind of how the gallery walk works. You jump into the present mode of Google Slides, and you use the buttons to navigate between things. In this case, we'll enter. What you're jumping into is the first room of your gallery walk. This is based on the Unladylike episode on Queen Liliuokalani. She was the first queen of Hawaii and the last monarch of Hawaii, actually. And the video itself gives you the story. But how this is kind of connected to Hyperdocs was that you take the idea, and when you click on something that's within the Google Doc, it brings you into a different slide that's linked and into an activity. It describes, what the activity is. And when you click on the button, you're brought into a link of the activity or the lesson or what the student would do. And so they're able to engage in the links. They're able to, I'll bring you back to the room. A student would be able to click on this, and it's gonna play some music. So they're able to listen to the music and engage in that. And then when they click on the guitar, it's bringing them into a slide where there's going to be a music activity. And again, linked, click on the button, and it's going to take you to, sorry, that one. That link this is actually a classic example of what happens when your links aren't quite right. That link was supposed to take you to something else, and it is taking you to a different page. So I'm going to have to let PBS know that. And that is taking us to a different page as well. But that's why you've got to test your links to make sure that they're attached in the right way. But the documents, as you click in and out, give you an idea as to what you can do. And so so basically, as you move through the different rooms, this is very student-centered. Students are able to click on the different artifacts in these rooms. They're able to engage in the activity. They're able to move at their own pace. They can go in and out of each of the artifacts, click through here. The back button gets them back into the room. And again, like I said, student-centered, they can move at their own pace, but they're also able to while they're moving at their own pace, engage in different types of materials, videos, articles, activities, maps. That's another thing. And so that's kind of how I've taken the idea of Google Docs and even of Hyperdocs and just expanded it into other avenues. So I really like what I like about Hyperdocs is I like the freedom that you have because the concepts are still the same. You're wanting to engage students, you're wanting them to link to different types of content, and they're able to move through it at their own pace.
Amazing. Does anybody have questions for Sarah about Hyperdocs and how she's used them?
I have a question. Is Adobe Spark a subscription, or do they have a free version for teachers and students?
Yeah.
I can actually talk about this because we're technically not supposed to use it. I don't know if that's changed, but as of last spring, because their COPA and FERPA was like, I think you had to be 13 and above. So my workaround was that I had it open on my account and I sat with the kids when they were creating, and it was kind of like a station. And I think I could open like 5 at a time on my account. Like I remember, because I did a project where they created like a digital public service announcement. So I just like opened 5 and I literally had them where I could see them working and I knew they weren't in anything else. I don't know that our tech department would give you the same answer, but yeah, it is free and it's awesome. But unfortunately, it's not one of our tools that we're supposed to use at the elementary level, at least.
So one of the things that I would say to that is I am a secondary, so I don't end up in that same spot. It is free for teachers, it is free for students, but I'm hoping, and Amanda can weigh in on this, as a teacher, you'd still be able to use it as a way to guide them. So maybe they're not creating their own Adobe Spark post, or they're not creating their own Adobe Spark page. It doesn't mean that you can't, correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda. It doesn't,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
you couldn't use it as that. And I do have a little bit more freedom in my district with my tech department. I got some insight from Amanda for sure in regards to some of the challenges that kind of come out of that. So I guess I would say talk with Amanda about your workaround with those things, because of course she's the best resource since you know her, but don't let it keep you from utilizing it. I can't really speak the praises of Adobe Spark high enough, just because the time-saving abilities to create graphics, to create like simple web pages as a teacher, to even something as as you can create the most beautiful little banners that you post to the top of things, is worth it for you to use yourself. And it allows you to download them as PNGs. So you can download you definitely can download the images. And really, in terms of Hyperdocs, you could create your own images that you are using in your Hyperdoc to navigate kids through. You can use Adobe Spark to do that. So definitely check it out from your own, for your own uses, even if you can't necessarily have the students creating their own.
That's probably what you were asking, and I went straight to like student creation. But yeah, it's awesome, and you can definitely use it and have the kids look at the content for sure. I do have a question, Sarah, as far as thinking about this, with younger grades. Is there, when your students are going through this, are they supposed to do every activity? Is there a certain number they're supposed to do? I can definitely see like with younger kids where there might need to be some guidance, or like, probably less artifacts, to be honest, just because like they'll be clicking and then they'll be back. And
Yeah.
so I'm just wondering, like, if you either have suggestions for younger kids, or how do you kind of manage that with the depth of you know, activities that you have here?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have in here, what each room has in it is an original source document. So whether it is a treaty that kids read, or it is the firsthand writings or account of one of the figures, they're in the lesson plan for Explore. It actually states in the lesson plan that you would guide students to require them to do the original source document. It hits history standards, it hits English standards, but you would require that piece, and then you give them the choice of choosing one other thing that you would have them do. I can see in a gallery walk, because this is just built, it looks like Bitmoji classrooms, you know, it's just built in Google Docs. What you could do is you could build it like a choice board, and, you know, even if you wanted to keep the wall setting, you could still, if you wanted to post like a little chalkboard in the middle that gave directions on, you know, choose one from the left, choose one from the right. It gives the students the directions in that same way that we do with Bitmoji classrooms. It gives them a little bit more guidance on how they could work through it, so that they know, I need one from here and I need one from here. And like Amanda said, also limiting their choices. Maybe on the left side, there are 2 choices, and maybe on the right side, there are 2 choices. So you have 4 activities that you are creating to give them some choice, and you're having them do 2. That would be maybe how I would manipulate this to make it like a little bit more considerate of younger grades, or of really maybe even of your own time, because you don't want to create 1,200 activities spread across 5 different rooms. But that would be how I would give them some guidance, especially in a digital sense. Like if you wanted to post this to Google Classroom and you didn't want, you know, you weren't there, find ways to give them a click here for directions and build that in. With PBS, we didn't do that. So you can enter into this and not have any direction, because we built it so that teachers could make those choices on their own as to how they would want to do that. And then just gave the lesson plans down here, and any of the supplemental materials, the, you know, supporting materials are in these different places. And so, but that's a great question, because like I said, this is built for 6 through 12. You can kind of manipulate it how you need to for 6 through 12. But I still think that there are ways that you could use this at the elementary level, in the sense that if you were creating something like a gallery walk that is that engage, explore, explain, there's ways for you to link it like you do in a Bitmoji classroom.
That's great. Thanks to both of you, Amanda and Sarah. This was a great discussion. Does anybody have any parting questions for our presenters, or anything you're wondering? I wonder, Sarah and Amanda, if you would put your email addresses in the chat box, or maybe even type them on the slide deck.
Or Twitter.
Or your Twitter handles too. So then maybe if people have follow-up questions for you later, they can connect with you directly.
If you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter
is terrible. I haven't checked my Twitter in like 2 months.
I looked for you too the other day. I was like, oh, where's Sarah?
I keep tagging you in things, but but yeah, Twitter is a great place to go and learn from like-minded teachers. And we actually have a chat for educators in Montana every Tuesday at 8 p.m. But we had teachers from all over the country, all over the world, actually. We have Canadians join us and stop in at 8 p.m. and visit. We don't have it tonight. We're taking a hiatus for Thanksgiving, but we'll be back December 1st. And it's just an hour of Twitter discussion with teachers. It's a lot of fun. So we hope you'll join us for that. We really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for joining us. And this has been recorded, and so we'll be posting these on our YouTube channels. I think Carrie puts hers on the Idaho Public Television channel, and then I put mine on my Montana PBS channel, so that we've got those for anybody you'd like to share them with later, if there's parts you want to rewatch again. And then again, please feel free to add this slide deck to your drive. and refer to it later and reach out with any questions that you might have. And thanks to everybody for joining us, and we appreciate your time. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.